All right, here's the fourth and last one, music history of the, I'm setting my timer here. Music history of the Saginaw Valley from Bernie Bear. Now, I got out of the Air Force in 66. Pete Woodman is still alive down in Detroit doing special events, and you can find Pete Woodman, the drummer, with no fingers, and don't play him golf or don't play him basketball because he'll beat you silly. But Petey had two thumbs and all his fingers missing, born that way at the first joint of your hand. So he had 4 stubs at the first joint, like that, all right? Both hands. 66, I got out of the Air Force, came back to Michigan, and we put a band called the Bean Machine, 3 of us. Michael, myself, and Pete Woodman. One night, we were out in Freeland at his mother's parents' house where Pete lived, and it was way back in the woods, over the hill, a dirt driveway, and they had 132 cats in the backyard. Maybe not that many, but guaranteed over 30. So anyway, and Kathy Graham lived across the street and down a little ways. She'd come listen to his practice. You know who else would come and listen to his practice? Meatloaf. Still in high school, possibly, or just out of high school. And Meatloaf joined Pete Woodman. There's a picture of them at White's Bar, Blues Bar in Saginaw. Just after I left, there's a black and white picture of Michael, the guitar player I brought from Boston, and Susie and Pete and Meatloaf. Now, and there may have been a bass player in there. They might have went to 5. One day when we were a trio practicing, we were practicing a particular song. But boy, it sure would be nice if we had keys in the band. Susie would sit there with long surfer hair reading paperback novels, love books, or love stories. And Pete turned around and says, "Well, Susie plays piano. She's had classical piano training." We ran right to a big music store in Saginaw, bought an electric piano, and Susie joined the band. And Susie's still playing to this day, even jazz groups in Detroit. So Susie's alive and still playing. So that was Susie's beginning in the Bean Machine. And Meatloaf jammed with us. Now we knew, or Pete knew, question mark and the Mysterians, but I hated Farfisa, Oregon, because I had come from Hotel Street in Hawaii for 2.5 years, where every group that was a 4-piece either had Hammond B3 and Leslie in the group, or the 4th piece was a tenor sax player. So they were all trios with tenor for the 4th or Hammond B3 for the 4th. And I even went that way. The first, both funk families had Hammond B3s and Leslies. I'm probably the only guy that talked a Hammond player into cutting his Leslie in half, and the 15 inches pointed down to the wooden squirrel cage that spun. We stuck it and faced it out the front like a bass amp, and it still had the spinning horn in the top. But they played louder that way. You had two 15s pointing out with 2 horns. So we had what we called the golden saw, and we actually sawed Leslie's in half back in the late 60s. What else? Pete played with the Playboys, which eventually became the Frost. And I'm bad for names, so I'm not remembering the name of... Dick Wagner in the Frost. This is music history of the Saginaw Valley. Dick Wagner in the Frost. And Dick Wagner has, or had, I don't know if Dick's still alive, might be, had a son that lives in Phoenix, Arizona. So Dick Wagner would come to Phoenix, Arizona every now and then and visit his son. Also, another one shot through my mind that I was trying to remember. This is not a musical, but when I joined, here's another story. I'm at the Pure gas station across from the Chevy dealership, and a little west of there was McCardle Pontiac, where I bought my first brand new car off the showroom floor, 68 Firebird 400 with the chromed engine. Everything under that hood was chrome. They even wrapped chrome around the alternator. Chrome air cleaner, chrome valve covers, you name it, it was chrome. It would blind you when you opened the hood. And it was fast. I did 94 miles an hour, I think, in the high 14s or something, or the low 14s. I couldn't break 100 mile an hour because it was stock. I didn't have traction bars on it. And the only thing that beat me was a 396 4-speed with traction bars. I beat all the Mopars, the 383s, and the 440s. I beat them all with that Pontiac, except another Chevy beat me. Oh, and the guy that I beat used to own a 383 or, no, it was a 440. It was a 440. I beat him, so he ordered an L89 Camaro and got drunk one night. His buddy was driving it. They crashed it into a tree or a telephone pole. He lost his elbow on his right arm. They fused it in an L shape because it was so badly crushed they couldn't save it, so they fused the bones together. I went to meet him in the hospital. His arm was hanging in the air with meat hooks in it while it was healing up, and he could get his arm to his mouth to eat, but he couldn't bend his elbow. All the bending was done at the shoulder. So, and what was his name? We had a band house together. Coolest band house in the world. It was across from a factory. The factory had a large parking lot with a cyclone fence around it, but the gates were always open. The house was across the street in the middle of the block. We took black paper and blacked out all the windows so we could party. If you drove by looking for the party, the house looked like it was shut down, empty, closed, because the kegs of beer where people were slipping down the steps and falling into the beer downstairs, you had to come in the back, walk down the driveway, come in the back door, go downstairs. Upstairs in the living room, no furniture, just pillows and a stereo. And it was a band house. And it was blacked out. Unless you were invited there or had been there in the past, you could drive by and not find the band house. At 3 o'clock at night, 3 a.m. So that was a party house we had. I'm still trying to remember my friend who I rented the band house with. Dave DeMillemaster? I know the last name's correct. So Ron or Dave DeMillemaster. So anyway, so much. Roland, who's in the grave, Johnny Burke, Roland Burke on Hammond B3. Oh, the story. I'm in the Pure gas station with my buddy who I came out of the Air Force with, Dick Armstrong Jr. He has just passed away at 79. I'm underneath a car. I'm greasing the front end, and here stands 3 musicians at the tail end of the car looking at me, and they all had Beatle haircuts. And it was Roland Burke, Johnny Burke, and Buzz Ashton, a trio that played the Horseshoe Lounge in Saginaw. Well, Roland played Cordovox, electric accordion, so he was playing bass lines on the buttons of the accordion. Didn't have to squeeze it. Cordovox, electric accordion. And he wanted to move to B3. And so they wanted to hire a bass player, electric bass player, and they hired me. Now, I had a military crew cut. I'm going to end with this story. I had a military crew cut, short hair. Buzz offered, one of his girlfriends had burnt his hair, so he went out back in the 60s, late 60s, spent $80 on a Beatle wig. And that was a lot of money back then. He let me wear the Beatle wig as my hair grew out. Well, we had this jump spin dance step that the two of us did with Johnny on drums and Roland on Hammond. And one night in the Horseshoe Lounge, I didn't pin the wig down on my long hair, which was getting long and curly and wavy, well enough. I did the jump spin, and the goldarn wig went up in the air and spun halfway around and covered one eye. So here I am standing in a packed club, 100 people on the dance floor, 300 people in the club, with this wig spun around halfway across my face. Well, I came with a Big Apple hat on the next night, never wore a wig in the rest of my life, and that's the wig story that spun on my head in the Knightsman in the Horseshoe Lounge in the 60s with the Knightsman, Buzz Ashton on guitar, and they were known for Higher and Higher. Was that the name of the song? They did it really well. Oh, check this one out. Roland played trumpet. I played trumpet for 1 year in 6th grade and traded the trumpet in for a Sony reel-to-reel tape recorder. I couldn't read the dots on the paper, couldn't read music. So I went out and got a trumpet, and we did Do You Like Good Music? Yeah, yeah, that sweet soul music. Except I sang it higher than that. I sang the lead, and we both put up trumpets, and we doubled. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Can't sing that high anymore. So anyway, Arthur Conley's Sweet Soul Music. We were the first band in Saginaw to do that one and open it up with 2 trumpets. Gotta Go, Can't Talk, Midland, Michigan, Bay City, and Saginaw, Michigan, an hour and 15 minutes north of Flint, 2.5 hours north of Detroit. Says, adios, amigo.